Hi everyone. Today I wanted to discuss things to consider when you're selling your home. And a big thing to consider is any tax you may own on the sale. So first let's dive into this by just talking about an average person or couple that purchased a home in the last several years and has decided to upsize or downsize due to a change in circumstance. So if you owned your home for 5 years and lived in it for 2 of those 5 years, you'll qualify to receive a capital gains exclusion. If you're single owning the home, that's $250,000 of gains exclusion, and if you're married, it's $500,000 of gains exclusion. This means that if you have profit on the home, that you'll be able to exclude either $250,000 or $500,000 worth of profit from the taxable gain. So for most of us, we'd be so fortunate to make a profit like that and holding a home for just a few years or so. So for most people, it's really non-issue that they would potentially exceed those limits. Where we want to be careful is we're in a situation where we purchase a home and it's not our primary residence and that it becomes a rental. Because many of us are maybe owning 2 properties, and this gain exclusion only applies to the primary property that you're living in, or again, one that you've lived in for at least 2 years. So where does this concern really come into play with the capital gains exclusion? Well, for one, for seniors that have lived in their home for a really long time, they're likely to have a big gains on the home. So for instance, potentially your parent has purchased the home for $50,000 in the 70s and now the home's worth $600,000. That's not unreasonable in the area that I live in, that's possible. So in this situation with seniors, if you're thinking about moving them to assisted living, you want to consider on how long they may be there for. Because if they end up renting the apartment or having it vacant for more than 5 years, they're going to lose that exclusion. Another thing to consider for seniors is that potentially they have a long-term care policy. And if you live within Massachusetts and potentially some other participating states, if you have a very basic policy that pays a benefit of $125 a day and pays a benefit for 2 years, the home is excluded from Medicaid, which means that if you run down all your other assets on paying for care, the home is not considered as part of your net worth and can successfully pass on as an inheritance. So what you don't want to do is sell the home and turn it into an asset that is now no longer protected. So just keep that in mind in the event you do have a long-term care policy. Lastly, I get a question of, well, what if we purchased a home and something unforeseen happened? So my job changed and now I have to move out of state, or we had twins or triplets and we weren't expecting that. So we had purchased a 3-bedroom home and now we need something much larger, or something about my health has changed. In that situation, even though you haven't necessarily met the test to receive an exclusion on the $250,000 or $500,000, you would likely receive a partial exclusion, which could be up to $125,000. The other thing I want to point out to people is that what's considered isn't just the purchase price when calculating basis. An important piece is any capital improvements you've done on the home. So even if this isn't an issue you're really concerned about, if one thing you could take away from this is to please remember to document any capital improvements you're making to the home. So if you're replacing the furnace or adding an addition, because upon the sale, all that value you've added into the home can increase your basis so that your gain becomes much narrower and helps you stay under the exclusion if you meet the 5-year test, or if you don't meet the 5-year test, we'll just narrow the profit on the home. The IRS has definitely released a list, which you can find on my article, as to all the things that are included as a capital improvement and things that can't be allowed. So for instance, let's say when you first moved into the home and recarpeted everything, but then 15 years later you did it again. You decided you don't want carpet, you want hardwood floors. You can't count the value of that initial carpet as value to the home if it's no longer actually there and you've already swapped out the flooring again. But a best practice is definitely to keep like a Word or Excel sheet and make a list of all the things you've done, the cost of what you've done, and when it was done to the home. And that also helps with just the resale. People that are buying kind of like to know when things were done and what you've added into it, because one of the things they're looking at is what you purchased the home for. So if you're asking for a lot more money, they might wonder why. If you purchased a home for $300,000, now you want $500,000, you might say, that's crazy. Why would I spend that much more 5 years later? Well, potentially you redid the kitchen and the bathrooms, and that added considerable value to the home, and they don't know that unless that's brought to their attention. So I hope that was helpful for you today. Please check out the article on my site for more detailed information, and feel free to reach out. You can find me at www.powwowllc.com, and you can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Have a great day, guys.